I wish I knew this before buying an Xbox Series X. What's up, guys? My name is Nikolai and this is Joyshift. If you're new here, this is my gaming and tech channel. We play a lot of racing games. I do everything car related in video games, and then we also do tech videos, so it's a lot of fun. So make sure you do subscribe to the channel because we're gonna have a whole lot of fun videos just like this one in the future as well. But let's go ahead and jump into this. So here are a few things that I wish I knew before buying my Xbox Series X. So very first thing we're going to jump into is the Xbox Series X even worth the hype? So it's so difficult to buy one of these consoles. I mean, I was searching for like 2 months just to get the Series X. It is so difficult, and it almost feels like it's not worth it because we literally have consoles like the Series S where it's so much easier to get. You can just walk in the store. It's not even that difficult to get it. And then you have a thing like something like the Series X where I literally could not find it. I could not buy it anywhere. I was struggling. Had to wait for drops to release. They sell out in seconds. It's just not worth it. But the thing is, I had this misconception that the Series X was just such a great console. I put it up on a pedestal. I said, this is the best console out there. This is what I need to have. The Series S sucks. It's not that good. You need to get a Series X in order to have fun playing video games, but that is just not true. So when I got the Series X, I was pleasantly surprised to see it's not that much different than a Series S. So I think the Series X is a great console, but it is not something you need to stress yourself out about just to try and get, because we have great consoles like the Series S. Now, if we had only a Series S available, I think you would still be fine. Obviously, if the Series S could do 4K, that would be great, but that's just not the case here. That's really what the Xbox Series X is for. Hence the name X. Typically with Xboxes, X is going to be like their best line. We had the One X, which also did 4K. So this one does do native 4K, which is cool, versus like the Series S. It doesn't do it. It only does 2K, and then you can upscale to 4K. But here's what I really want to mention to you guys is, when you get a Series X, the upfront initial cost of $500 MSRP as of now for the console is actually, there's hidden fees in there as well that you might not know about. So, I mean, obviously, if you already have everything here, you won't need this, but let's just look at it this way. If you get a $500 Xbox Series X, you're not only $500 deep, you also need to get a TV that is capable of actually outputting what this console can do. So you need to get a 4K TV, preferably would be like an OLED, but you don't need that. You can get like a QLED or just an LED, but you do need a high refresh rate. So this thing can do up to 120 FPS. So if you want to be able to see that, you actually have to have a TV that can do that. Or you could probably also play on a monitor, but if you're playing on a TV, you're going to need a very expensive TV. And from what I've seen, TVs that are able to actually output what the Xbox Series X can do are starting in like the $900 range. So now we're jumping into PC territory, and I almost kind of wish I went for a PC because it's kind of hard to say, because it's so interesting because it's a cheap, I use cheap relatively, right? It's all subjective and it's all relative, but the amount of performance for the $500 price point you get is incredible. Seriously, next-gen consoles are packing a huge punch for the price, and that's what I love about them. They're just offering so much for the price, which is great. But once you get into some details and you find out you're actually probably looking at around $1,500 just to be running a system like this, it's quite expensive because you can't just hook this up to a 1080p TV and expect it to look amazing. It's probably going to look the same as like your Xbox One S on a 1080p. Obviously, there's going to be differences, but when you're playing at 1080p, it's really not utilizing what the Xbox Series X can fully do. Now, this video isn't going to be only the bad things. I actually want to talk about quick resume. Now, this quick resume feature is available on both consoles, but I just think it is so cool that next-gen consoles have this available to them. So if you don't know what quick resume is, basically quick resume is you can swap between games and it'll remember where you were, or you can actually turn off the console and it'll remember exactly where you were in the game. And what blew my mind is one day I actually had to unplug my Xbox just to move it around, and when I went to plug it into the new spot, so I keep in mind, I fully unplugged it from the wall, plugged it back in, and then it still actually resumed from the last point in the game, even though I had unplugged it and plugged it back in to a whole new different area. So it's definitely a cool technology that you're able to fully power off the console, and then it is still able to actually use quick resume. Like, it's such a nice feature. The only thing is, when I'm playing Forza Horizon 5, whenever I actually have my wheel set up, I can't reuse my wheel, so I have to actually still close the game and load it up. And by that, I mean my wheel, the force feedback just disappears. Like, the wheel doesn't actually turn back on. It's probably just something within my wheel, but that's something to note. Maybe you guys are also having that issue, and I'm sure it's a quick fix. It's just something to note that It's not perfect, but for the most part, it is really good. So that's something I kind of wish I knew, just how good quick resume is, because it probably would have made me want one a lot more. And it's a good feature to have. Another thing I really wish I knew before getting the Series X, this applies to streamers and people who are content creators. So if you're someone like me, I just started up my channel. I'm really new to all of this, so make sure you do subscribe because I just started the channel and I do love it. Shameless plug there, but the console does record in 4K HDR, although something that's, I don't know, it's a little bit deceiving, because you see, okay, the console can, through its game DVR, record in 4K HDR, and that just seems great, right? But what I've noticed is the bitrate is actually so low that it doesn't even look 4K. I mean, it might as well be 1080p. So I've been recording all of my videos here with a 1080p capture card, and I honestly think it looks better than the 4K that's internal from the Xbox. And also, when you're running game DVR recording at 4K HDR, the console tends to overheat and it just can't handle it for the most part. Honestly, I'm finding that this thing definitely starts to struggle. You know, you can't really play for more than like an hour, and then just doesn't want to really run it as cool. You know, it is going to overheat a lot. So that's what I found. Now, maybe this is just my console in particular. I might be the only one experiencing this, but it is something to note that when you're running game DVR, you know, recording 4K HDR, it's really not the best quality, and the console really does tend to struggle. But if you are a content creator, I would highly recommend, don't assume that the 4K internal recording on this console is going to be good. It's acceptable. I will say that it works. It gets the job done. But if you're looking for a highest quality and highest bit rate, you're definitely going to want to get an external capture card, because this one, it's really not that good. For example, like when you're playing a racing game like Forza Horizon 5, what you'll notice is when you move really fast, everything just becomes kind of fuzzy, and it almost looks too disintegrated, I guess, if that makes sense. Like nothing looks crisp. Everything just looks like it's kind of fallen out of place, and you can definitely see the difference between a high quality 4K capture card versus the internal 4K digital recording. Now, I know digital recording on the Xbox has never really been designed to be a replacement for a capture card. I just wish that with a next gen console, we could have at least had a higher bit rate in order to record in a much higher quality 4K, because it's a little deceiving that we can record 4K HDR up to an hour with, you know, an external flash drive, but it's still, the bitrate just isn't there to actually have a quality video. And I've just had problems with it. You know, sometimes the audio doesn't sync up. Sometimes it doesn't even record at all, which is weird. So I think that's definitely something that can be solved in an update, but it is just something to note. Now, going into the UI of the Xbox. So this kind of, if you're going from, like, let's say an Xbox One to this console, you're going to be pleasantly disappointed, because it is the same UI as the Xbox One. Now, I know there have been slight changes, and I know people are saying, oh, it runs much smoother now because the consoles are much better. But I don't know. It runs into the question of, if it's not broken, why fix it? But at the same time, the PS5 has a whole new UI, so it looks much more advanced. That one also runs 4K. Meanwhile, on this one, even though the Xbox Series X can do 4K, your UI is actually still in 1080p. So when you are switching into a game that is 4K, your UI will actually go black for about a second and then switch over from 1080p to 4K. So it isn't seamless. It's definitely noticeable that it's not 4K. Now, I guess, does it matter? Probably not, because if you're just, you know, scrolling through your games, getting from point A to point B, it's really just there for like a transportation system. It totally works. You know, 1080p is all you need. But it's also like, we're playing next gen, you know, we would expect to see at this point something this powerful, especially at $500, would be able to at least run a 4K UI system. But whatever, it's not really anything to, you know, gripe about, but it is still something to kind of note, because it's like, come on, like, we're playing 4K video games, but we can't run the UI in 4K. I don't know, that's just something I noticed. It doesn't bother me too much, but it is something to note. So there you have it. Those were a few things that I wish I knew before buying my Xbox Series X. And as you can see, this list is very short because this console is incredible. I've had nothing but fun with it. There have been a few bumps in the road, but for the most part, it has been a very great console. I've had it for about a month and I've really enjoyed playing on it. So this video is short because there's really not a lot that's, you know, wrong with this console. And for the most part, everything that you see on this console is true. So you probably know most of it. But other than that, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because I'd love to see you guys on the next video. I put a lot of work into these videos, and I think it'd be great to have more people in the community watching Joy Shift. So make sure you do comment, subscribe, all that. But other than that, we'll see you in the next one.